So we all know who Jason Todd is at this point, right? Red Hood, the second Robin, the goodest of soldiers and the angriest of bat boys. Troubled street kid Jason Todd is caught by Batman midway through boosting the tires off the Batmobile and is subsequently taken in and given the title of Robin for a short time before dying a tragic and needless death at the hands of the Joker by fan vote, only to be revived decades later to become the favorite anti-hero of your least favorite comic friend after they heard the Punisher got canceled.
No. Wait.
Maybe you have taste and you watched his fan favorite animated movie back in 2010. Maybe you're an uncultured swine and first learned about him through the god-awful Titan show on HBO. Or hell, maybe you just have a passing knowledge of Batman and were confused why Deadpool was rocking a biker fit and hanging out with fugly-ass Superman and Ginger Wonder Woman over here. But chances are, if you have been anywhere around DC Comics in the past decade, at minimum, you have at least heard of Jason Todd. If you're like me and really in the trenches, you might have even heard that Jason used to be a redhead, or even that he used to be a Dick Grayson clone, even down to being a circus acrobat in an act called the Flying Todds. And I mean, honestly, who could blame you? Because oftentimes, that right there is all the lip service that the pre-crisis version of Jason Todd ever gets. A boring, unimportant, half-remembered Dick Grayson clone that was rebooted and fully rebuilt from the ground up at the first available opportunity. But I am here, researched and smug as hell, to tell you that you've been lied to. That not only was the pre-crisis Jason Todd a worthwhile and intriguing character in its own right, but many of the things that make Jason such a beloved, and sometimes hated, character today were there from the very inception. And that many of the things that make him a clone were actually his from the start. So sit back, grab a snack, forget about stolen tires and fan votes and warehouses in Ethiopia. And let me tell you a story of loss, of identity, of love, and of struggle. A story you've probably never heard before. Let me tell you the story of pre-crisis Jason Todd. Before we really get into it, we need to get something out of the way. Namely, what in the holy hell does pre-crisis even mean? All right, so history lesson. Back in 1985, DC Comics had a small problem. Not really anything all that big. It's just that the entire multiverse was a massive clusterfuck and nothing made any goddamn sense anymore. You see, the publisher had been running stories consistently since the fucking 30s. And in those 50-odd years, they had made quite a few stories, to say the least. Now, that wouldn't inherently be a problem on its own. However, all 50 years of those stories, the good, the bad, the confusing, the stupid, the experimental, the racist, from the 30s all the way to the 80s, were all canon. And on top of that, DC is pretty much single-handedly responsible for comic multiverses existing at all, and their use of it would put our modern-day MCU to shame. See, DC had a whole bunch of popular characters and stories that were scattered throughout a variety of different Earths and universes and timelines, and that meant that anytime you wanted any of these characters to interact at all, they would need to literally hop dimensions, or time travel, or travel by any other variety of convoluted means. And, as if things weren't complicated enough as it is, DC had recently acquired Charlton Comics, owners of characters like Peacemaker, The Question, Blue Beetle, and editorial wanted to fold those characters into the existing world. So, for the sake of simplifying things, in a decision that they would spend the next 4 decades trying to take back, DC rolled out their first of many such big-ass reboots to come, condensing all their universes, characters, properties into one updated and modernized timeline. This 12-issue publisher-wide event was deemed Crisis on Infinite Earths. So, when something is called pre- or post-crisis, it just means that it's the version that appeared either before or after this massive reboot. Some things only changed a little, some things changed a whole lot, and some things got erased entirely, not unlike DC's other universe-wide reboot. And just like everyone's favorite character assassinator, it only exists because Barry Allen fucked everything up for everyone by running too goddamn fast, and no one can agree if the results were a good thing or not. Case in point, today's focus. One Jason Peter Todd. Jason was introduced back in 1983, only 2 years before Crisis on Infinite Earths, solely to replace Dick Grayson as Batman's sidekick. That was his whole purpose. At that point, Dick had existed for damn near as long as Batman, premiering only 1 year after him in Detective Comics number 38 in 1940. And in that time, Robin had gone from an 8-year-old child sidekick to a independent, strapping young hero of 18. Because, you know, this is back when comics would actually let people age, albeit slow as hell. On top of that, for a variety of editorial and story reasons, Dick had been fairly absent from the mainline Batman title for the better part of 14 years at that point. Dick spending the majority of his time being the leader of the Titans in New York. But just like every time comics try to get rid of Robin to make Batman more realistic, readers and writers alike started to feel the very Robin-shaped hole in the stories and in Batman's life in general that, you know, needed plugging. But at that point in the comics, Robin wasn't a title that got passed. It was just Dick Grayson, and Dick Grayson was not gonna come back easily. So what were they to do? Well, that brings us quite neatly to the beginning of our story, which is right in the middle of an existing story arc. Lovely. Well, let's get into it. All right, guys, so this video is already long enough, so I'm just gonna try and focus on the parts of these stories that have some focus on Jason. So don't go in expecting a full recap of like 100 issues of Bronze Age Batman here. Also, I only read Jason's mainline appearances, meaning Detective Comics 523 through 567 and Batman 537 through 403. Partially because that's where he was introduced, partially because it's where he would logically get the most focus in character development, and mainly because I'm a lazy dyslexic fuck, and this was already 92 issues of incredibly hard to source comics. Hop off my dick and argue with the wall. It's my video, so you wanna know more? Go read it yourself. Or don't, because like I said, this shit's really hard to get a hold of. I just got lucky that my wife was already a collector. Anyways, we're jumping in media res here, so let's set the scene. We're in the middle of the storyline that introduces Killer Croc as a character for the first time, his pre-crisis version being a lot more of a calculated, violent, ruthless gangster than the tragic brute that we would come to know post-crisis. Batman is currently in a terrible relationship with Vicky Vale after things didn't really work out with Selena Kyle or Talia al Ghul, which persists for way more of this story than I'd like to admit, so I'm basically not going to talk about it. Dick Grayson is primarily based in New York, where he works with the Titans. However, Dick is making his apparently annual visit to the also apparently annual Gotham Circus to meet up with everyone's favorite perma-clown. Who is it?
Who's that Pokemon?
Waldo! What, you guys don't remember Waldo from the you know, he was, or from, anyway, well, he used to work with Dick and his family at Haley Circus, but transferred over to Sloan's, which is the circus he works at now, alongside an act that he thinks might be right up Dick's alley. Or maybe Dick's lawyers, it's hard to say. The world famous family of acrobats, the father, mother, son trio, the family of death-defying flying Todds. Stop, okay, I know, okay, I know I said he wasn't an outright Dick Grayson clone. Just hold with me, okay? I swear that it gets better. Okay, so anyways, at the same time as Dick is watching the act, Croc and his guys start shaking down the ringmaster for protection. Come on! Well, a few days later, Dick invites the Todds over to a party at Wayne Manor, along with Waldo for some fucking reason. And Jason's mother, Trina, ends up accidentally walking in on Bruce receiving medical attention from Alfred and Dick, discovering all their secret identities in one fell swoop. Don't worry though, she's a fellow carny, and the Flying Graysons are practically royalty in the circus world. Apparently not royalty enough to not rip the whole fucking gimmick off, but hey, what do I know? She swears she's not gonna tell anybody though. However, she does tell the formerly dynamic duo of Croc's protection racket on the circus. This inspires what might be the most colossally stupid fucking thing that Batman and Robin have ever done. See, in a fight a few days later, Croc seemingly dies. So in theory, the racket should be gone. But just in case Croc is in fact not dead, Bruce and Dick decide to ask the Todds to personally keep an eye out for Croc or his men to let them know if they see anything. However, The wording Dick uses to convey this is, "We'd like you to help us capture him." This action will have
Consequences.
consequences that are, admittedly, not invisible to the once dynamic duo, as Dick actually mentions to Bruce at one point that they're asking the Todds to do something fairly dangerous, even if he doesn't realize at the time that his careless wording has made it all the worse. But Batman, instead of taking those concerns into consideration, snaps at Dick for even mentioning it. He says, and I'm quoting here, "Scum like Killer Croc wouldn't be able to get a foothold in this town if more people were willing to take risks to stop him. I'm sick of citizens who want us to save them from life's hard realities. Your friends made a commitment, Richard, and they will honor that commitment, or to hell with them and to hell with you." A response so intense that it leaves Alfred and Dick completely stunned and speechless. The only explanation that even we get is that Bruce admits to feeling guilty about the outburst later. To himself, of course. Batman doesn't apologize, come on. But he blames it on being overwhelmed. So all is well, right? Well, whether he meant it or not, Bruce gets his wish, because instead of calling Robin when they see Croc's man pick up his money, professional acrobats and parents Joseph and Trina Todd decide that the best course of action would instead be to leave their 11-year-old son with his clown friend and trail the professional gangster themselves and personally follow him into the reptile wing of the Gotham Zoo. Needless to say, the obvious trap is obvious, and they go missing. When Dick pulls up to the circus later looking for them, Jason and Waldo inform him of the couple's attempt to be amateur detectives because they were doing something secret for Robin. Something about a man they were supposed to follow. Dick, slightly silently panicking at this point, takes the both of them back to the manor, only to be pulled aside by Batgirl, forcing him to leave the pair alone in the manor with Alfred while he goes to, hopefully, find the Todds. Fun fact, actually, this was the first time it was ever acknowledged that Barbara just straight up knew who Batman and Robin were, calling them both idiots for thinking that they got away with badly pulling the wool over her eyes a few issues earlier. They still have no fucking clue who she is, though, so anyways, while out looking for the Todds, they get a call from Commissioner Gordon. That brings them to the reptile enclosure, where Gordon... You know what? I think I'll just let him tell it.
Dear Lord, after all these years, I'd have sworn I was hardened to anything, but this...
Commissioner, there are two people I'm looking for. Are they here? Trina and Joseph Todd, the Flying Todds. They were helping us track down Killer Croc.
Civilians? You brought civilians into this?
I'm not happy about it, Commissioner. Just tell me. Are they okay?
No, boy, they are not okay. They must have done their job better than you expected. They found Killer Croc. Or perhaps he found them.
Oh my god.
We can only hope they were already dead when he threw them to his friends below. You brought them into this, Robin. It's on your head. Joe. Trina. No.
No, get them away.
Get them away! You nuts! Those babies are man-eaters! Hey! Robin! Damn you! Damn you! God!
Damn me. I'm so sorry.
Lord. In Jason's original origin, Dick Grayson, or scratch that, Robin, is the reason that Jason Todd is orphaned. Before he would ever put on the suit, Jason's connection to the mantle would be soaked in tragedy and in loss. Sure, you could say that the Todds were overconfident, that Batman and Robin came up with this plan together, that they never intended the Todds to put themselves in danger, which is debatable considering Batman's outburst, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, the simple fact of the matter is that Robin, with Batman's enthusiastic blessing, brought two civilians into a battle they had no sense being in. And that decision cost them their lives and their son his parents. Speaking of said son, He got bored basically being left alone in a fucking stranger's mansion with no one but a sleeping clown to keep him company, so Jason goes to exploring. He's pretty good at it, deciding at this point that hell, he's already in trouble, and at this point it's all or nothing. Jason starts trying on old costumes of dicks that he finds in a chest, throwing on this snazzy number, which, if you know anything about pre-crisis Jason, is probably the image you know of him. I'm gonna be honest, I can't blame him. I'd do the same thing if I stumbled ass backwards into the Batcave. I just thank God that this was before the bat suit was explicitly booby-trapped, because otherwise, we might have done Death in the Family just a few decades earlier than planned. Another fun fact, actually, at the end of the issue, we see a small flashback of Dick Grayson the night his family died, and he seems to be wearing this exact same outfit, meaning that Jason has inadvertently decided to wear the same mourning clothes for the death of his family as Dick had to wear for his. You're really not escaping those clone accusations, are there? But come on, help me out, I am trying here! To make an exceedingly long story short, Jason ends up sneaking into the back of the Batmobile and tagging along to the final battle with Croc without anyone even knowing he's there, because you know what, fuck it, why not? He's already in trouble, right? He even ends up personally saving the lives of Catwoman and Talia al Ghul. They were part of Batman's story, don't worry about it, it's not important. And no one even knew he was there. This is only the first of many unsung hero moments he has pre-crisis, so, you know, get used to it now. It comes up again. Unfortunately, because he's here, he also overhears Barbara telling Batman what Croc has done to the Todds. This marks the beginning of what would become a long-running pattern for Jason and Bruce, where Jason comes in at the last possible second to stop a villain from landing some sort of final blow on Batman, leaving them open for Batman to land a hit that then finishes the villain off. I'm not entirely sure why this happens so often, but it genuinely popped up like 5 or 6 times throughout this run. Like I said, unsung hero. Once he's out of hiding, however, Jason, understandably, loses his fucking mind on Croc. But unlike you would assume based on his later characterizations, this is only a momentary outburst where he is overcome with grief before being comforted by the heroes as best they can. He doesn't even hold on to this rage later either. He's more scared of Croc going forward than he ever is vengeful. Which, I mean, even compared to Dick, who explicitly joined Batman to go after his parents' killer, is exceptionally tame. Now, this next detail is one of the biggest differences from pre to post-crisis Jason Todd, and it's actually something that doesn't happen as opposed to something that does. You see, the next morning, when they make it back to the manor, Dick admits to Bruce that because of his role in the death of the Todds, and because more than anyone on Earth, he knows what Jason is feeling, Dick Grayson wants to adopt Jason himself. Good fucking Lord, someone get on making this fucking Elseworld. The things I would give. Holy shit, how has this not been tapped yet? Because seriously, after hearing this, Bruce pretty much just goes, yeah, that sounds tough, kid. Anyways, yoink, and adopts Jason right out from under Dick. Ignore the air quotes. I promise that they won't come back to haunt the narrative later. Anyway, but while this is just a moment before establishing the new status quo they did this whole fucking story arc to achieve, it also highlights both Bruce and Dick and who their characters are at this point. It shows that Dick has really taken Gordon's words to heart, that he takes sole responsibility for the fate of Joe and Trina Todd. It shows that even now, so early on into Jason's history, the writers know that Jason is nearly identical to a younger Dick, and therefore, Dick can see that too. And on top of that, it highlights that Dick's a grown man now, that if he decided to adopt Jason, he simply could. The whole Teen Wonder moniker only has like a year or two until it doesn't fit anymore either, regardless of if Jason came along or not. And as for Bruce, it's not as favorable. It highlights the fact that he does not correct Dick in taking responsibility, that whether he means to or not, he leaves that weight solely on his ward's shoulders. And while still hearing out his concerns, and as we will soon come to see, having quite a few of his own when it comes to raising young Jason, he is unwilling to have that responsibility be handled by anybody other than him, even if Dick can understand Jason's experience more closely than Bruce ever could. Not to be more dramatic than I already am, but it shines a light on the cracked foundations of the family Jason is about to be inducted into. And it does all of that in 2 panels. And that's Jason's original origin. Are the basic bones the same as Dick's? Yeah, sure, obviously. But they were trying to replace a massively popular character who had existed for the same length of time as Batman without confusing the readers who didn't get the memo that this was going to be a new kid. And mind you, this was also the first time ever doing a mantle shift like this, especially for a sidekick. There was no precedent, no formula, no format to follow. The succession of Robin was equally bound by the medium's limitations because they knew that they'd have readers who would miss the handoff if they weren't reading 2 simultaneous runs at the same time, or didn't catch the comic in time, or even if they just didn't have spare funds for comics for a couple months. It wasn't just a matter of good or bad writing, or sufficient pre-planning, or respecting an established character. They were completely uncharted waters, and shortcuts were the best option that they had. And they were aware that no matter what, they were going to get shouted down by half of their readers for it regardless, because comic fans have, just always loved change just so much. But even with all of that taken into account, aside from the pure basics of the story, which is honestly just the fact that he's from an acrobat circus family called the Flying Blanks, and that the circus is being shaken down by gangsters, you get so much more here. There's not a lot that ties it back to Dick Grayson. I mean, Jason finds out Bruce's identity completely on his own. He puts on a costume, but is not made a sidekick, something that becomes a major point for the first third of his run. Bruce and Dick are directly responsible for his parents' death. Jason is adopted outright and not made into Batman's ward. There are so many things that not only set him apart from the clone status, but also prop up what's already there. And that's just his introduction. It only goes up from here. With his origin out of the way, you'd think that the next arc would be training Jason to be the new Robin, like it was for Dick, but no. Jason has a long time, roughly 16 issues, 8 months of real-world time before he officially becomes Robin. The writers knew that they needed someone to fill Robin's role in Batman's life, but at this point, they had no idea what that looked like. It's pretty obvious that from a writing perspective, everyone's still kind of trying to figure out if Robin is a title or if Robin is a person, which again, even DC wasn't sure of at this point. They had to gauge fan responses in real time while shuffling through the kickback they undoubtedly anticipated to try and find the genuine overall reception, all while trying to invest long-term in this character because it would just be cruel and weird and ridiculous if they tried to walk back Bruce adopting a new kid. So Jason had to be his own person one way or another. The only real question was that going to be as Batman's sidekick or as Robin proper? And I mean, don't get me wrong, in universe, it's not like Jason's dragging his feet. He's quite literally begging to be Batman's new sidekick from the very first issue after his origin, but it's actually Bruce who repeatedly tells him no. Bruce wants Jason to be a somewhat normal kid, and considering how his relationship with Dick has degraded over the years, he's not really sure that having a child sidekick is good for either side of that. Problem is, Jason already knows he's Batman. And if Bruce isn't fucking up yet another date with Vicky Vale, he's out on patrol, or he's on a case, or just straight up sleeping. I mean, hell, there's an entire issue dedicated to Bruce being refused sleep at every turn. This man is impossible to hang out with, even if you're literally living in his fucking house. Jason has no other way to be a part of his new father's life. And it brings to the forefront what I would consider to be Jason's foremost character trait throughout the rest of his appearances pre-crisis. That being the desperate need to prove himself worthy. I mean, hell, 7 issues into living with Bruce, Jason just straight up runs away to rejoin the circus, feeling neglected and overlooked and ignored by the man that he wants to see as his new father. And I mean, honestly, what other option would he have to sit every night knowing his new dad is the Batman, that his parents believed in this man's cause so much that they died for it, but to be denied any involvement in it. And therefore, in Bruce's life, given the man's obsession with the cowl and his mission, it would be far more than just being treated like a child. Jason is asked to sit behind glass and watch from a distance, unable to join his new father in an authentic version of a life together. Because Jason knows what that authenticity looks like. He knows it's Batman and Gotham and all that entails. And because of being denied that, he also receives no general time or attention as a newly orphaned boy because Bruce's civilian hours are already so limited. It's no wonder he avoids the emotional approach with Bruce when trying to make his case and instead focuses on trying to prove himself, because he tried the emotional approach repeatedly and it simply never works because appeals to emotions don't ever work on Bruce Wayne. So with that, the only logical conclusion is that his father does not see him as ready. Jason becomes predisposed with proving himself instead of justifying himself by the heart, and that unfortunately will lay his path until Crisis. A path that starts the night he finally decides that enough is enough and runs into a character by pure happenstance that will come to define the rest of Jason's pre-Crisis existence. So let me take a moment to formally introduce you to the Mistress of the Night. All right, guys, I'm gonna ask you to do me a favor. If you have ever seen this name before in reference to DC Comics, just forget everything you fucking know. This Nocturna is not the vampire that you would later see in Batwoman, or the other vampire that you would see in Cape Crusader, or the other vampire that you would see in the CW. You know what? But she's not a vampire, okay? So just forget it all. She's nothing like any of those. This is Natalia Knight. Natasha Knight. Natalie Knight. Fuck it. Okay, she's Nocturna. This is Nocturna. We're gonna call her Nocturna. Once nothing more than a homeless orphan, Nocturna was taken in by an unbelievably wealthy man who, unknown to her, was secretly a gangster. There we go. That explains it. After living in lavish luxury for many years, her adopted father ends up dead in a gang war, as gangsters do. And at his funeral, she is introduced to her stepbrother, Anton, who is a master thief that has conveniently been away training the entire time Nocturna had lived with their father, which is concerning for a number of reasons. After having tasted both the devastating lows of abject poverty and the soaring highs of ludicrous wealth, Nocturna had developed an infinite lust for opulence and wealth in all of its forms. And once their father's ill-gotten gains dry up, those forms usually end up being stolen valuables from the rich. For a long time, however, she was actually gainfully employed as a Wayne Foundation astronomer at the Gotham Observatory. But because this is comics, one day a laboratory accident results in her skin being sapped of all of its pigment, leaving her this pallid white and making the sun highly deadly to her. So like, I get why people think that she's a vampire after it, but like, this is a real medical condition. People actually have to deal with this shit. It's not just like she can't go outside and she loves the night. She's got to be a vampire. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Lucky for her, said medical condition doesn't really seem to be a huge issue. As an astronomer, I mean, she's already basically nocturnal, and she's always really had this unexplainable, deep-seated romantic obsession with the night itself since childhood. So her newfound repulsion to daytime was of little concern. But after the Wayne Foundation withholds her L&I claim to see if she's entitled to any additional benefits, therefore removing her access to the lavish life that she feels entitled to, and because she is, you know, going on indefinite medical leave, and this would be replacing her fucking salary, you dicks. For reference, astronomers now make like mid-range six figures, so I have no fucking clue what she was pulling in. But after this, she and Anton begin their crime spree, operating as Nocturna and the Thief of Night. Oh, right, yeah. Also, her primary method of transportation always seems to be this custom hot air balloon for seemingly zero actual reason, which, I mean, listen, it's not as cool as the Batmobile, but it is sufficiently goofy as hell, so we love her for it. And honestly, in her first appearance, that's kinda it. While she'll eventually end up becoming the Ahsoka to Doug Moench's Dave Filoni, in her first outing, she's more of a villain of the week, debuting in this two-parter where Batman just cannot get ahead of Anton as he steals things from all of Gotham's elites for her. She's written to be this poetic seductress, always speaking like she's in an old-timey romance novel, obsessed with the very idea of the night and with luxury. She's beautiful beyond compare. She's in an explicitly incestuous relationship with her stepbrother. Wait, what the fuck? But she's notably never categorized as evil. She never actually does anything criminal herself. Anton always ends up being the one to steal everything, and they never really kill or hurt anybody. The only time that she ever does anything even remotely offensive is when she tries to break Anton out of holding after Batman turns him in, and even then, it's always at least attempted to be non-lethal. Like, she doesn't try to kill anybody, as, sometimes close as she gets. I mean, dropping a grenade on a truck is... hopefully the guy's okay. But anyway, keep all of that in mind for later. Because after Batman captures Anton, Nocturna is at home, staring longingly out the window, as one does when you're, a romance era maiden of the night. And she just so happens to spot Jason on the very night that he is running away. Nocturna, in the first signs that she might play more of a maternal role in this boy's life, and despite having absolutely no idea who the hell this boy is, goes to see what's wrong. She appears in the mist in front of Jason as if she was a ghost and questions him. And Jason, despite everything, decides to confide in her.
What the? Are you a ghost?
Do you believe in ghosts?
Well, no.
Then either your beliefs are about to be shaken, or I am not a ghost. Sit. We will talk.
So I decided that even though this guy is like a new father to me, I've gotta get out on my own. Maybe even go back to the circus.
I was also orphaned, Jason, but I was not fortunate enough to find a guardian as quickly as you. I wandered a long time on my own in the cold and the darkness before I finally found someone to take care of me. Why do you want to wander now?
He won't let me be who I want to be. Won't even let me be who I was.
Maybe his hands are tied.
Huh?
By emotion. Maybe he loves you too much and fears losing you to the freedom of what you want to be.
Yeah. Maybe you're more right than you know, lady. What would you do?
Go back to him. Go back to the one you love, no matter what the risk.
Yeah? You really think so?
It's what I'm going to do.
Now, as admittedly beautiful as this scene is, it accomplishes very little in the moment. Nocturna still decides to try and spring Anton, and Jason still decides to run away back to the circus, but that's not really the point, is it? The point of this scene is more so to lay the groundwork of what is to come more than it is to immediately solve anything. Nocturna had no reason to help this boy, and Jason had no reason to confide in her, but they both trusted each other, almost implicitly, and showed that there was a potential bond that could spring from these two. Something I can't help but feel was intentional on the writer Doug Moench's part, but we'll have to come back to that later. As I said, Jason still had roughly 10 more issues, 5 real-world months, until he would officially become Robin. Hell, I mean, it was 7 issues until he even went out with Batman in Gotham for the first time, Robin or not. In those issues, Batman would get Jason back from the circus after, Jason tracks down a serial killer on his own to once again prove his worth to Bruce, and Bruce would promise to give him a chance as his new partner. Notably, not a chance to be Robin. Batman did not view Robin as his role to give, or even one that could be given in the first place. In fact, when Jason dyes his hair black, this is the last time we ever see his blonde hair. It's never mentioned again, so I guess just say goodbye to that little detail. After he dyes his hair black and steals a leftover costume from Dick's room to try and help Batman stop the Joker, yikes, Batman openly berates him for wearing the outfit at all, saying he had no right to wear the costume. The prevailing sentiment, even at the time, is that people both in and out of the story agreed. Not only is Jason not a Dick Grayson clone, Jason should not be made into a Dick Grayson clone. Jason was his own person with his own personality and should form his own identity separate from what came before, which is what makes Dick showing up 4 issues later with the official suit in hand so bittersweet. Dick shows up completely unannounced, having seen a photo taken of Batman with Jason earlier when he had stolen the Robin costume, and formally gives Jason the official costume and identity of Robin, stating that he's outgrown it, that he gives it willingly, and that it is Jason's now. The moment comes off as incredibly bittersweet, with both Bruce and Dick almost brought to tears, both with pride in the growth of both of them as people, and at the silent realization that the original Batman and Robin will truly never come back together again now. Jason, however, is elated, finally given permission to literally fill the shoes of a man he's idolized as a performer and now as a superhero. And speaking of, as quickly as he arrived, Dick leaves, saying that he might just try to be Dick Grayson for a while. So long, Robin. Be great. And with that interaction, that would be the last time that we see Dick Grayson for the rest of Jason's pre-crisis run. For how much their personal relationship was set up in his origin, for how much people talk about their relationship now, you would think that Dick would be around more in Jason's life, right? But no, he's there at the beginning, he's there in the middle, and he's nowhere else. But I mean, also, like, no shit, right? There's only 14 real-world months until the world ends in Crisis. That is 14 Batman comics and 14 Detective comics, and he's already a main character in a completely separate book. They probably couldn't bring him back around in time anyway, when he was now free to be redeveloped himself by a different writing team, which notably is the entire reason Jason was invented in the first place, to allow Dick to age in a new role at last. But in that same vein, Dick has had one of the biggest impacts on Jason's life out of anybody. He's directly responsible for the end of his previous life, and in giving Jason this costume, he's now directly responsible for the start of this new one. Just like Batman tells him, Jason is stepping into a legacy built by Dick Grayson, good and bad, a legacy that until this moment wasn't even a legacy at all, a legacy that Jason is now solely responsible for carrying on. So how does he do that? Well, I mean, Jason nearly dies on his third night out, so yeah, Jason doesn't exactly have an easy go of it after becoming Robin officially. In fact, after the two-parter that gives him the identity where he is very nearly beaten to death by Crazy Quilt, Jason is either entirely absent or operating in a way that I have deemed Robin TM. Robin TM is when Jason is technically in the book and he's operating as Robin, but there's nothing that would really make someone who didn't know it was Jason under the mask know that it was Jason under the mask. Which I guess was kind of the whole point of Jason in the first place, right? To introduce a character to take the place once held by Robin in Batman comics. It's just unfortunate whenever it pops up, because it doesn't make Jason a character, it makes him a stand-in. Because there's only ever been one Robin before him, which means it literally forces him into being a Dick Grayson clone whenever this pops up. Because so much of Jason's character up to this point has been a quest to prove himself, to define who he is, both to Bruce and to us, giving him the Robin mantle, I mean, hell, giving him any mantle, means taking that central drive away. Unfortunately, now that he finally is Robin, it's really hard for him to not just be Robin. Combine the repeated use of Robin TM whenever Jason is not the primary focus of the book across his 90-odd appearances with Jason's similar but different style origin for those who even care to know it, and it's hard not to see why everyone calls him a clone. Remember, this is well before Robin annuals or Robin-specific runs. I mean, even for Dick Grayson, those didn't start until Tim Drake's solo series decades later. If they kept giving too many arcs or issues devoted to Jason, they just get more and more fan disapproval. Not just for upsetting the balance and replacing Dick, but for taking attention away from the headliner of the book, Batman, in both of his own series. There was, again, literally no option for DC here. Jason could be afforded only so much screen time for his own characterization because DC would get flack for the character that they had decided to make if they didn't. But they would also doom Jason to accusations of being a clone if they didn't. So yeah, Robin TM. So, how's about we start doing some things that could only happen to Jason Todd? All right, everybody, strap in. This one's going to be a long one. Meet Amanda Gorsh. Hi, Amanda. Nice to meet you. Okay, nice and acquainted. Everybody met Amanda? Good. Prepare to be ungodly annoyed with this fuck-ass character for the next 18 issues, which, might I remind you, is
9 real-world months.
75% of a year. Because you see, Amanda works for the Child Welfare Bureau, which is essentially just CPS, so I'm just gonna call it that. They recently got a call from Jason's teacher at school. See, it turns out Jason has been a bit sleepy in class lately, and she just wants to make sure that he's getting proper care at home. Their investigation into the matter reveals that Bruce Wayne's colossally dumb ass never actually filed any paperwork in order to legally adopt Jason. And no, this is not a trick. It's not a scheme. This isn't revealed to be some criminal plot. Bruce Wayne just genuinely took a child into his care illegally and started acting as if he was his legal guardian. So Amanda, rightfully, starts hounding the living shit out of the Wayne house, trying to do a welfare check. Unfortunately, usually catching Alfred, who then has to come up with an obviously bullshit excuse as to why she cannot see or talk to Jason, until she comes up with enough of a case to just take him. Which she does, coming right into the house with Detective Bullock and putting him up in a halfway house. Plain and simple. And like, as annoying as this character might be from a reader's perspective, can you really blame her? This random aloof billionaire, known for his playboy nature, who apparently personally bankrolls a good chunk of the government organization you work for, essentially kidnaps an orphan from a traveling circus and keeps him in his mansion on the edge of town, which is apparently the second time he has done exactly that, with the first kid being all but completely estranged from the man. The new kid shows obvious signs of exhaustion in public, has pretty much no social life, vanished for over a month a while back, and is only ever seen at school, where he is personally chauffeured to and from alone by the only person you can seem to get a hold of on the phone. And anytime you try and do a welfare check, even if it's in the middle of the fucking night, he is mysteriously missing, along with his illegal guardian. I would also be a teensy bit concerned. Well, also, understandably, Bruce is a bit upset. After sobbing in his room for a little hour straight,
Oh my god, are you crying?
No, it's just raining.
he puts his lawyers to work. And by his lawyers, what I really mean is the entire Wayne Foundation legal team, whose salary he literally doubles until this issue is resolved, which, spoiler alert, is not anytime soon. Meanwhile, you'll never guess who's come back to Gotham. That's right, it's Doug Moench's favorite OC, Nocturna, who's unfortunately had to end things with her most recent business partner because, they went and fell in love with her again. How is she supposed to get other people's riches delivered to her doorstep now? Well, would you look at that? All over the headlines, they're talking about how that Wayne guy recently lost custody of his adopted son and is trying ever so hard to get him back. We can only hope that some lily-white seductress doesn't adopt the kid right out from under him and then use her sole custody of that beloved son to force Wayne into marrying her, thereby giving her unlimited access to his ludicrous amounts of generational wealth. That would be terrible! So Nocturna gets an apartment in Gotham and gets to doing exactly that. And you know what? Considering that drama queen Bruce Wayne spent the first hour of the morning draped over his bed sobbing like a heartbroken Victorian heiress in a romance novel, this telenovela-ass plan might actually have some legs. Meanwhile, it turns out Nocturna's brother Anton has recently escaped from prison, has heard about her recent business partner's infatuation with her, and completely logically assuming that the feelings were mutual based on her promiscuous nature that we've definitely seen, just straight up fucking kills him out of a jealous rage. All right, all of our pieces are set. They're all on the board. You following? Good, because this shit's about to get soap opera levels of complicated as if it already wasn't. So Nocturna just straight up wins custody of Jason in court. Is it partially because the judge is in the pocket of the corrupt mayor who is trying to hurt Commissioner Gordon by way of his good friend Bruce Wayne? Sure. Is it also because Jason very enthusiastically said that he wants her to adopt him for some fucking reason? Also, yes. When confronted about this, Jason reveals that you have no need to worry. He's not being stupid for plot purposes. He's being calculated and stupid for plot purposes. You see, both Batman and him know that Nocturna is in fact a villain. The courts don't because she pinned it all on Anton, hence he's being in prison and her being on the outside. But Jason's plan is to bust her from the inside. And in doing so, the custody for Jason will be rerouted back to Bruce. Somehow, therefore resolving this entire issue, proving to Bruce that he is worthy as a detective and as a crime fighter. God damn it, Jason, not this shit again! Well, Bruce just has to kind of deal with it and find a way to expose Nocturna as is and let Jason do what he can, I guess. Honestly, the real heist that Nocturna pulled in all of this is having Bruce double all of his lawyers' salaries for months just to lose anyways. I bet a couple of those guys just fucked right off to Fiji and never looked back, and honestly, good for them. Amongst all of this, Anton goes to let Nocturna know that he murked her ex-business partner so that they could be together again, and she doesn't take it well, to say the least, threatening to kill him outright if he doesn't leave and never come back for having the audacity to disgrace the beauty of the night by spilling blood during its embrace. Remember that whole non-lethal thing I said would come back around later? Yeah, here it is. It's here now. Girl's got some pretty strong morals about killing. How's that bat boner doing, Bruce? Anyway, Anton leaves. Up until Batman comes around and tries to be threatening to Nocturna about the whole Jason thing about 5 seconds later.
Yeah, editing Panda here. Upon going back and actually, reading the fucking page, it turns out that Batman is not trying to be threatening about the Jason thing. He's checking in about the murder of her previous business partner, which is a lot more understandable, honestly.
Anyway, she uses this pheromone-based perfume that she has to try and seduce him, only for Anton to spring from the shadows and try and kill him for daring to touch Nocturna. And Nocturna, being the reasonable woman that she is, shoots Anton in the goddamn back, seemingly killing him. I guess I spoke too soon about that whole non-lethal thing. God damn it, Nocturna, you were this close! She then kisses Batman and reveals not only her whole marriage plan, but also that she knows his secret identity. Somehow. This is never explained, and Anton gets away during Batman's confused shock at all of this, in what is one of the funniest goddamn comic stories I have ever read, to the extent that I have made a whole separate video over on my Patreon just to explain it. Go check it out if you want the details of how this dude got away. Nevertheless, this ends up with Anton hiding with a blind woman in Gotham Bay, Nocturna in custody of Jason Todd, and Bruce feeling very confused and frustrated about his feelings towards this villainess. And that's just kind of how things are for a while. And you know what? Credit where it's due. While her plan to baby trap a billionaire utterly failed, and now she is not only not having a crazy rich husband, but is also down a brother/lover, and has a whole ass child now, Nocturna does try to be a genuinely good mother. She takes Jason out when she can. She tries to connect with him. She takes an interest in him. She tries to be honest with him. She even tells Batman no when he comes to take Jason out as Robin, and then makes a whole superhero outfit to go save his ass and scold Batman when they do it anyway and end up in over their heads. She is trying really hard here. The problem is Jason, honestly. Jason has always had a very black and white moral code.
Oh my god. I hope that's the right one, Felipe.
Imagine that. And that code doesn't really have any leeway for, well, I might have been a criminal before, but I'm trying my best to be a mother now. In his mind, there's no exceptions. I mean, for fuck's sake, he's so unforgiving that he makes her cry repeatedly. Jeez, come on, dude, lighten up, jeez. And you know what? To be fair, he's like 12 max, and he's officially been Robin for like maybe half a year, so his views on criminal justice and empathy apparently have some growing up to do. Well, while all of this has been happening, Anton has finally healed up enough to go after Nocturna for killing him, because that's how he sees what happened here. You know, honestly, I would want to be dead after that whole escape plan too. Oh, yeah, and by the way, this is Dr. Fang. He's a failed boxer. He was the head of the Gotham Underworld for like maybe 20 minutes, and he just got released from prison by the corrupt mayor with the sole mission of finally killing Detective Bullock. It's a whole thing, don't worry about it. And he is currently ignoring that to go and settle the score with Batman, because obviously, overall, he's not really all that important, but just, keep him in the back of your mind for now. I promise it'll come back eventually. Anyways, Anton just shows up at Nocturna's house one night and knocks both her and Jason out, tying them both up so that he can monologue specifically at Nocturna before killing them later. Batman is still out hunting for Anton after their last encounter weeks ago, which, again, dumbest fucking plotline, and again, Patreon, I swear, it is so fucking stupid. And having completely run out of ideas, he goes to Nocturna because maybe she might know something about where Anton would go, only to encounter this whole scene. A fight breaks out, and somehow these two are evenly matched. And that's not even a one-time thing. Anton might be dumb as a box of rocks, but goddamn, that boy can fucking scrap. Well, halfway through this fight, who should show up but, oh my god, Dr. Fang! He saw Batman fly in through the window outside and came to get his vengeance. Anton, on the other hand, has some other ideas, and he lines up a shot, blasts away, kills Dr. Fang instantly, and grazes Batman's skull with the bullet in the process. Buckle up, boys and girls, shit's about to get fucking weird. Batman is so dazed by this shot to the head that his sense of self completely and literally shatters. And Anton is able to convince him that he is in fact not Batman, but actually him, Anton Knight, and that he just killed Dr. Fang, and that Anton is actually the Batman. And then Bruce passes out. Anton swaps their costumes and goes to start a crime spree in the Batsuit to smear Batman's name. And when Bruce wakes up, fully believing that he is in fact Anton Knight, he just buys into the whole delusion and jumps out the window into the night. Nocturna and Jason, mind you, have been tied up through all of this and are fucking mortified by what is happening. Jason is able to break free of his bonds at the last second, but he's just a little too late to catch Batman as he jumps out the window, so he frees Nocturna, and the two agree that they need to stop Anton and find Bruce as soon as possible. And for 2 whole issues, that's what they're doing. Okay, that's not the first thing that they do. The first thing that they do is stash Dr. Fang's body in the public park so that no one comes sniffing at Nocturna's house. Grade A parenting there, Nocturna. But then Nocturna throws on her superhero outfit, Jason throws on his Robin fit, and they go hunting for Anton and Bruce. Admittedly, they never find the latter, and they only catch up to Anton one time and end up getting their asses summarily handed to them in the process. But despite that, you can honestly see these two are starting to care for each other. That Jason is starting to let his walls down a bit and maybe accept this lady might be a mother figure, something he was sorely lacking at the Wayne house. There's actually a really sweet scene where Jason actually finds the stash of stolen goods that he got adopted by Nocturna to find, and he confronts her about it. He says he's gonna turn her in, and she admits that she would let him. She swears to never steal again, and that she has done nothing but try her best for him. But that if he wants to turn her in still, it's his choice, and she'll respect it, and she leaves him alone to make that decision. And Jason doesn't. Don't get me wrong, he wants to go back to Bruce, but he has grown to care about Nocturna genuinely, and he doesn't want her to get arrested just so he could be with Bruce again. It's really sweet, and it really shows the growing character of Jason Todd as a kind-hearted kid who just wants to do the right thing, but so desperately longs to be loved and to belong. On the other hand, Nocturna is in the other room preparing for the boy she has grown to love as a son to turn her into the police. But who should show up but, oh my gosh, it's Bruce, fully healed up and with a plan. Don't ask, it's a long story, it doesn't matter. He asks Nocturna to suit up and to come with him, jumping out the window to enact his plan. Essentially, he just needs her to send in an anonymous tip to the cops to tell them that Batman will be at a certain spot, and afterwards, he leaves her be, even seemingly conceding to her as Jason's mother. And look, I've described the whole plan and how Anton and the mayor are taken down, but this video is about Jason, so just know, Batman had a plan, it worked. He's Batman again, the mayor's out of office, and Anton's in the win. Oh, right, there is one thing though. He made sure that Amanda Gore saw Nocturna leave her home with what seemingly was the Night Slayer so that she would take Jason away from Nocturna and give him back to Bruce. Bruce, you selfish, dick-headed, evil fuck. What the actual fuck is wrong with you? This doesn't even end up being necessary, honestly, because upon seeing that Bruce didn't turn her into the cops when he had the chance, she decides that Jason is better off with Bruce anyways and leaves on her own, thus ending the Adoption Saga. That's it. So after all of that, what was gained? Well, Jason, for one, becomes much more open-minded as a character, not being as black and white in what he views as right or wrong. He has a newfound acceptance for bending the rules depending on the justification, as well as realizing that he has a serious lack of a maternal figure in his life. From this point out, he sees Nocturna as his mom, and he misses her deeply after the relief of being home again finally wears off. Batman, on the other hand, is completely static. Yeah, honestly, the only thing that he gets out of this is an unending lust for Nocturna, and that just ends up being an effect that she has on pretty much every man she's ever met. And Nocturna does eventually return. But before we get to that, we do have to get through. So, I'll admit, this section's title is a little disingenuous. Yeah, Jason is operating as Robin TM for a decent portion, but there is a really good two-parter that's supposed to be a lead up to Crisis on Infinite Earths about halfway through, where Jason finally confronts Batman about constantly benching him because of the dangers of being Robin. After yet another instance of Jason running off and doing something on his own to prove himself as a crime fighter, he even gives Bruce an ultimatum to let him continue as Robin or not, which, by the way, is not the first time he's given Bruce an ultimatum, so he knows he means it. I promise that in the moment, this is more empowering and less entitled than it sounds. After reading damn near 60 issues of Batman treating Jason as if he's wearing fucking floaties, it's refreshing to see someone say something about it. You know the famous "I'm Robin and being Robin gives me magic" panel that people love to use when they're talking about Robin era Jason? That actually comes from this argument. Some other new developments during this time include the new rule that Jason needs to be getting enough rest, that another CPS incident doesn't happen again, and a growing bond between Jason and Detective Bullock of all people. I'm not entirely sure why, but these two are paired up quite a lot, and it started all the way back when Jason first got sent to the halfway house back in the Adoption Saga. It's kind of sweet for Jason to have a buddy, considering that he doesn't really seem to have anyone around his age to bond with, and seemingly doesn't really have any friends to speak of. But you know what? Bullock's clumsy brashness pairs well with Jason's sarcastic wit, and they end up making a pretty good buddy cop pairing. But outside of those few developments, Jason is either not really there or relegated to the dreaded Robin TM role for about half a year leading up to Crisis. And that unfortunately includes an issue that is supposed to be written by him. He's literally in the byline and he's Robin TM this whole time. However, as the skies turn red and the end of a multiverse approaches, we enter into a new arc for Jason. And unfortunately, the first step of the end. Welcome to the final arc of the multiverse. Welcome to... Guess who's back? It's Catwoman! What? Who did you think it was gonna be? Well, all right, well, anyway, I bet you forgot that she was even around, mostly because the last time that I mentioned her was way back in Jason's origin issue. He even ends up personally saving the lives of Catwoman and Talia al Ghul. They were part of Batman's story. Don't worry about it, it's not important. And no one even knew he was there. She came back for an issue here and there in between, and now she's on the straight and narrow. She's trying to be a genuine superhero, cleaning up the streets of a gang of another villain that I neglected to mention that first appeared during Jason's pre-crisis years, Black Mask. Well, you know, she is trying to do that until someone starts murdering them mid-chase with Catwoman, leading the cops to believe that she's back in the villain game, which is mysterious. Oh, yeah, also, Nocturna's back too. She enthralls a night security guard at the abandoned Gotham Observatory, declares it hers once again, and kicks the asses of some vandalizing teens so bad that they tell everyone about the sexy ghost lady that smacked the living shit out of them the night before. That info eventually being overheard in the lunchroom by a one Jason Todd. He goes to the observatory alone, having missed Nocturna and desperately wanting that maternal figure back in his life. And meeting her again, he actually calls her mom for the first time, and she doesn't seem to care. Okay, what the fuck is Nocturna even doing here? Well, being an astronomer who is deeply obsessed with the night, the sudden appearance of apocalyptic meteorological events alongside the skies being permanently changed from blue to red greatly concerns her, to the point that nothing else matters until she can find a way to, quite literally, save the fucking world. She seemingly tries to distance herself emotionally from Jason, while, you know, notably still not telling him to leave, because she knows that if she gives in to caring for him again, she won't be able to focus on what she needs to do. A sentiment that sounds startlingly familiar. I just can't seem to really place. Oh, hey, Bruce and Tim, what are you doing here? Anyways, it's not like the bond between Jason and Nocturna isn't picked up on by other characters. Bullock is able to finally piece together that Jason is a different Robin entirely. Not because he's 50 pounds lighter, a head and a half shorter, and 6 years younger, but rather because of how he treats Nocturna as if she's his mother. He even hypothesizes that he is her legitimate son. Commissioner Gordon is less than pleased with this particular piece of police work from Detective Bullock, to say the least, but we'll move on. Well, hey, remember all those murders that Catwoman was trying to piece together? Yeah, so it turns out that was actually Anton. Yay, I'm glad that he's back. Slowly picking off members of Black Mask's former gang to try and find out where Nocturna is, because he is just certain that she is leading them. She isn't. Okay, well, hold on, let me correct that. She wasn't until some psycho started going all slasher villain in the streets and wiping them out like they were female-led books after a crisis event. That led them to seeking new leadership, which allowed Nocturna, desperate for funds to continue her research into, the fucking apocalypse, to take over. Batman isn't too pleased to find this out, but is also just too damn hot for Nocturna to do anything about it. Doug, come on, dude, the answer to the question cannot always just be because she's hot. Anton, well, okay, Anton's an idiot, so he won't find any of this out for a long while, but Catwoman? Well, Catwoman also finds out that Nocturna is in charge of the False Face Society and goes to confront her, thinking that she can clear her own name if she brings her in for some reason. Yeah, I can't really figure out why she thinks bringing in the leader of the gang that the cops think she is picking off one by one would clear her name of all those murders, but hey, listen, you do you, Selena. I'm not the master superhero and thief here, so you can figure it out on your own. Yeah, you see, the only problem with that is, well, you see, Jason just got his mother back, and he ends up getting a reputation for throwing himself into danger haphazardly for less than perfect mother figures, and this is not exactly an exception. Selena, a firm believer in equal fights, knocks Jason to the fucking floor without a second thought. And Nocturna, who has been doing her best up to this point to ignore the costumed idiots who keep insisting on trying to distract her from saving the goddamn world, just saw this bitch pimp slap her baby boy so hard he might be knocked out. So now she's gotta die. Batman shows up halfway through, just because, really? He gets in between the two, trying to fend off Catwoman while Nocturna checks on Jason, and Catwoman ends up jumping onto the observatory telescope in perfect time to be struck by fucking lightning. She's alive. Don't ask me how, but we don't exactly know that at the time. Honestly, she's lucky. Usually random lightning strikes in Gotham lead to some major origin-changing shit. Looking at you, Roman. Anyways, Batman blames Nocturna for this, for some reason, before leaving with Robin. Yeah, he's fine, by the way, don't worry about him. To go and take Catwoman to the hospital. As they leave, an earthquake hits and turns the observatory into an island, stranding Nocturna out there alone. People tend to forget that Crisis on Infinite Earths literally destroyed the fucking world. So while Bruce stays with Selena at the hospital, it's just getting worse and worse and worse outside. I'm talking tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, you name it. Jason is, 12, so he's understandably fucking horrified. Bruce assures him that no matter what happens, that he'll protect him until the end, and in failing that, he'll at least be with him at the end. Oh, Jason, though, he's got a reputation to maintain, and that unfortunately means going to protect Mom. Problem is, Anton finally pulled his morph-suited head out of his ass and figured out that Nocturna is staying in one of the 2 places she has ever stayed in Gotham. Shocker. But that puts the two on a collision course. Anton unfortunately makes it to Nocturna first, and she is in a sorry state, to say the least. The night is literally dying around her, and there is nothing she can do to stop it anymore, if there ever truly was. She sees Anton as an opportunity to go out on her own terms, not consumed by the end of the world and the death of her beloved knight. So she lets Anton stab her twice in the chest, and she would have let him do it more if Jason didn't intervene, kicking the knife from Anton's hands. However, Anton is pretty much on par with Batman in terms of strength and knocks Jason away. And we already saw what happens to Nocturna when that happens. So, back into the fray. Batman shows up not too long after, followed by Catwoman, who crashes a fucking helicopter into the side of the observatory. She's on our side now, so don't worry. Nocturna catches 2 more stab wounds in the fight and is not in good shape. Holding off Anton, Bruce tells Jason to get Nocturna out of there. Jason, tears in his eyes, carries the only mother he's known since Killer Croc took his away from him, not sure if she's even still alive, and loads her into the only way he can find to get her off the crumbling island. He puts what he hopes isn't the corpse of Nocturna into her hot air balloon and sends her off into the sky, out into the active hurricane that is destroying the building around them, hoping against hope that he will see her again someday, that she is still alive and somehow will be when this is all over. Watching her go until he can't see her anymore, before returning to the fight. In that fight, what remains of this island is destroyed. Everyone's still inside, falling into the ocean and desperately swimming to shore. Miraculously, everyone survives, including Anton. But when looking back at the turbulent skies, Jason sees what remains of Nocturna's balloon, popped and thrashing in the sky. Batman needs to take Anton to jail and Catwoman back to the hospital, but Jason stays, staring out at the remains of the island, at Nocturna's balloon, at another parent taken from him too soon, killed by a madman for simply trying to do the right thing, for trying to protect him. And he cries. Listen, there's technically one more issue in this arc where the Night Guard from earlier sees the destroyed island and goes on a mad hunt to find Nocturna on that very same night, pursued by Jason and Batman, finding the remains of her balloon empty, implying that she might still be alive, before admitting that he was no longer under her thrall at all and just genuinely was in love with her, deciding to end it all rather than live in a world without her. Right in front of Batman and 12-year-old Jason, mind you, as if the boy needed any more fucking trauma after the past 48 hours. But when I read this, when I read this arc, Jason on the beach alone was the end of it, if not the end of pre-crisis Jason as a whole. Jason's life seems to be a sort of circle, beginning and ending in tragedy, in the death of a mother, and Batman's world is involvement, destroying Jason's life. A cycle of Jason rising from death, slowly clawing his way into being respected and seen, transforming a title only ever held by one other into his own, only for that cycle to begin again. There's a tragedy in its simplicity and in how it continues, even after this Jason is wiped away entirely. But we have one more arc to go before we get there. So without further ado... So, weird thing about Batman comics and their relation to Crisis on Infinite Earths, but Crisis doesn't actually fully reboot them for about another 12 issues of Batman and about 9 of Detective Comics, which is damn near a full year in real world time between the big Universal reboot event and Batman's actual origin reboot, that being Batman Year One. You see, Year One was originally supposed to be a graphic novel and was only reworked into part of the serialized comic fairly late in the process thanks to editor Denny O'Neil and the subpar sales of the mainline Batman title at the time. On top of that, the writer of Year One, a guy by the name of Frank, you might not know him, was working on a little book that you might have heard of if you're like a real hardcore in the trenches comic book fan. I don't know, it's kind of niche. It was this little 4-parter called The
Dark Knight fucking Returns.
See, Dark Knight Returns was coming out the same year that Crisis was happening, and Frank Miller's contract had him doing the new origin for Batman after he did Dark Knight Returns, so the timeline just got a little wonky in the process. So with all that extra time left in the world, what does Doug Moench do with Jason, seeing as his major character arcs all kind of revolved around a character that he dramatically disappeared going into Crisis? Well, he gets a girlfriend. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of the books in between now and the reboot from a Jason perspective. See, with Nocturna and Vicky Vale and Julia Pennyworth out of the way romantically, don't ask, it's a whole fucking thing. Batman and Catwoman really hard launch their relationship and honestly kinda leave Jason behind. Yeah, the grieving child who just watched his mom die, who he's still not sure if he killed in his attempt to save her. Yeah, he's left to deal with that alone, cause Batman's main squeeze is back in town, so water under the bridge, you know? In this era of comics in general, even back when he first adopts Jason, Bruce tends to slingshot between genuinely good and protective father to piece of shit narcissist with no emotions, seemingly depending on the story, and it's fucking exhausting, man. Well, in light of his adopted father's straight up fucking abandonment after the most tragic event in his life saved the death of his parents, Jason fills that hole in his life with two things: jealousy and teenage hormones. I saw a Tumblr post a little while back from a user named Renaroo that had a really good theory that I can't help but believe, that Moench might have tried to do a sort of subtle, soft update slash reboot to the Batman mythos on his own post-crisis, which is why Jason is so much more of a rebellious teen all of a sudden. He gets super jealous of Catwoman, only ever calling her the Cat Lady, being super bitter whenever she's around, straight up competing with her and Batman to try and solve a case faster than them when he teams up with Bullock, not at all melding with her, even as the whole arc opens with Batman setting up a case for the two of them to bond over solving together. I mean, shit, the only person Jason ever confides in about his grief over Nocturna is Catwoman in that same issue, and he still ends up being a little shit for the rest of it. And to make matters worse, Jason actually ends up getting his own love interest. This is Rena. She's an exchange student that Jason meets when he stops her from buying drugs to fit in. Remember, kids, Robin is cool, and Robin doesn't do drugs. Eat your heart out, Protector. It's such a dumb joke. That's like 4 people maybe just got that joke, but fuck you. I'm keeping it in. I'm keeping it. It's funny if you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, Jason and Rena become inseparable, and Jason figures that, hey, since Batman obviously prefers his new partner, he might as well not even fucking show up. And he does that. He just stops showing up to the bat signal, going on dates with Rena nightly for over a month, to the point that I genuinely thought that they might just be writing Jason out of the book until the reboot. Eventually, though, Catwoman leaves Batman directly because of this. She feels like she's driving a wedge between Bruce and his son, as well as not liking the sort of rebound from Nocturna vibe that she got from them getting back together in the first place. Conveniently, Jason asks Rena if they really have to see each other every night in the same issue, establishing that Batman and Robin will be coming back together again immediately before issue 400, which is Doug Moench's last issue, and which, I shit you not, is basically the plot of Nightfall beat for beat, but with Ra's al Ghul as the big bad instead of Bane, and Batman wins at the end this time, just with the gimmick that every few pages is drawn by a different artist. It serves as a send-off, like I said, to Doug Moench, who has been the writer of both Batman and Detective Comics for the span of pretty much this entire video, having started the issue after Jason is adopted by Bruce the first time. Jason is unfortunately very Robin TM this entire issue, and it ends with Batman rededicating himself to his mission, surrounded by all the still living major characters from Doug's time on the books. And from now until the reboot 4 issues later, you can tell that the writers can see the writing on the wall. The stories take up a much more meta tone. The one major storyline during this is about an imposter taking Bruce's place. The imposter fully believes that he's Batman, and he looks the part too, but he's violent, and he's brutal, and he's dark, even killing the criminals that he comes across. He's motivated the same by a loss in his family and an oath to avenge them, but he formed his idea of the Batman off of half-remembered pieces of media that he doesn't fully understand, and he doesn't really understand what makes Batman do what he does. He speaks in these short, to-the-point sentences, and he actively fights the true Batman when he's confronted, and he's only ever stopped when he's confronted with Robin, a Robin he doesn't have, who he never will. Crazily enough, it's in these issues that Jason brings up his feelings on absolute justice for the first time, decades before Red Hood and years before A Death in the Family, with Batman having to thoroughly explain why they operate the way they do, and why killing is never an option for them, kind of explaining it both to Jason and to the audience. Again, there's writing on the wall. Like, hey, maybe I'm reaching here, but it feels like the writers had some feelings about what was about to happen to Batman considering the new reboot, and that was probably influenced by a year of seeing what came after The Dark Knight Returns. So maybe they also had a couple of feelings about who was about to craft that new Batman for the masses. And that was it. That storyline wrapped up in Batman issue 403, and issue 404 started the 4-part Batman Year 1 storyline. And the first story after that, in Batman 408, was Jason's updated origin story, meaning that the pre-crisis Jason Todd simply ends. There's no send-off, no grand goodbye, no dramatic death. He just ceases to be. And the new Jason is still a continuation in a sense, sure, but the new direction, the new origin, it all leads to what Jason ends up becoming. And the fact that it was enacted at all gave legitimacy to the idea that Jason was nothing more than a copy, that a change was needed, that there wasn't enough there to develop, and that he was just Robin, TM. So is that true? What sets Jason apart from the Robin that came before? Who is Jason Todd, if not rerun Robin? Well, Jason Todd is characterized by a deep, desperate need to belong. Not just a desire to be needed, but a drive to be worthy, beyond a shadow of a doubt. He can't just be adopted by Bruce, he needs to prove himself worthy of being his son. He can't just be Batman's sidekick, no, he needs to prove himself worthy of being his partner. He can't just be loved, no, he needs to prove himself worthy of receiving love at all. He's terrified by the idea that loving him kills people, that simply by existing, he will cause suffering. We see a nightmare that Jason has at one point, and in it, his parents are stolen from their graves. Batman dies over their gravestones trying to stop it, and in his grief, he accidentally reveals their secret identities to the police. Jason is a terrified child, desperate to earn what he feels he does not deserve, desperately wanting to find a place to belong where he is wanted and appreciated in equal measure to his desire to stay. And in spite of all of that, Jason's stories are not often framed as sad ones. Far from it. Throughout his 90-odd appearances, Jason is a joyous, funny, infectiously charming character. He's shown to be smart enough to deduce things before Batman, repeatedly references literary classics, tracks criminals with no assistance, and brings out a side of Bruce that we had truly never seen before. It's hard to remember this now, but at the time, we hadn't really explored Dick Grayson's Robin years the way that we had to explore Jason's. Dick's stories as Robin all took place over the gold and silver ages of comics, where the stories were flashier and shorter, with much less attention given to the depth or drama of the characters. Most of Dick's most dramatic moments as Robin happen when he's with the Titans, not Batman. We hadn't really seen what Batman was like as a father in the modern era, and Jason gave us that insight. Dick's stories as Robin were focused on the plot of the issue, on being Batman and Robin and fighting every new villain of the week as a team, but Jason's focused mainly on what it was like to be a newly adopted orphan under the roof of Bruce Wayne. He's rarely ever Robin in the books, and when he is Robin TM for a lot of it. For most of the time, he's just Jason. And as Jason, many of the characteristics that we see of Dad Batman and how he interacts with his Robins in and out of costume started with him, and then were retrofitted onto Dick in later adaptations. Pre-crisis Jason Todd, I would argue, even more than Dick Grayson, is the basis of what Robin as a mantle is today and what it would evolve into. Dick Grayson was Bruce's first ward and Batman's first sidekick, and there's no doubt about that. But Jason? Jason was Batman's first son. And nothing can ever take that away either. When I first set out to read all this, I will fully admit, it was more out of a sense of ignorant curiosity, naivety, than it was a sense of injustice towards my favorite character. Panda Scarlet has been a collector of this era of Jason for years, and always swore to me how impactful it was. And as much as I wanted to believe her, I was admittedly incredibly skeptical. How could something so impactful, so monumental, be so easily swept under the rug and forgotten? If that was true, surely more of a fuss would have been made, right? The version I knew would not have become the standard, or at the very least, someone would be talking about it, right? right? I had assumed that I knew what I was getting into, that Jason had just had a short blip of being Robin before the world was reset and Jason was fixed from a ripoff Dick Grayson into a character that I love so much today. But now, having read the entire saga of this version of the character, after having seen the emotional journey that he goes through in his quest to be worthy, after seeing him fight and win and lose and lose and lose over and over again, and knowing how much of his character is then carried over to his post-crisis life, I'll be honest, I kind of find it hard to read post-crisis Jason now. He feels like he was dumbed down, like he was made easier to differentiate, made easier to form an opinion on. And is that because of the fact that I'm in my mid-20s and this was written with at most teens of the 80s in mind? Absolutely. But regardless, I can't help but feel like we lost some of the nuance of Jason along the way. And while I enjoy the nuance that was later added to his revised origin, I'm gonna miss what was built and then summarily abandoned. And this is usually where I would tell you guys to go check out these books for yourselves, to go pick up the trades or head to Global Comics or your local library or just to see if your local shop has them. But not only is the way that you have to read this story incredibly difficult to collect, with the story being told bi-weekly and split across Batman and Detective Comics simultaneously, meaning that you would have to collect 2 runs in order at the same time to be able to read this, but also, holy fuck, these books are nowhere! I've found a few reading lists online to read Jason's entire pre-crisis story in order, but as for collected editions or even ways to read it, I mean, there's one trade called DC's Finest, Batman Red Skies, but that one only collects Batman 386 through 400 and Detective Comics 553 through 567, or roughly from right before the final Nocturna arc onward. And that only came out in September of this year. By the way, final Nocturna arc, I mean the Blood Red Skies chapter of this video onward. That's all it collects. It's almost impossible to actually find these books anywhere if you're not already a collector like my beautiful wife has been for years. So honestly, best of luck to you if you want to check these out on your own. Good luck finding them. The reading lists are out there. You just need to hunt down the rest. Otherwise, I hope my brief insert laugh track here retelling was sufficient in making you care for this nearly forgotten piece of comics history. So, the next time that someone brings up Jason's red hair, or offhandedly says how Jason used to be a Dick Grayson clone, or simply says with certainty that Jason started as a street kid, look them dead in the eyes and ask them, yeah, but do you know about his super hot evil goth adopted mom? Oh, that's crazy. Did you know that Batman had technically kidnapped him for the first third of his appearances? Oh, red hair, crazy. Did you know that Dick Grayson actually almost adopted him himself? Oh, the Penguin, he hates the Penguin. Yeah, did you know that his original arch nemesis used to be Killer Croc? Oh, Flying Todds, wow. Did you know that Bruce and Dick technically killed his parents? So, you know, you're welcome for winning all of your actually battles from here on out. I want to give some special shout outs to Renaroo on Tumblr for their various posts that clarified timelines, characterizations, and events while I was researching for this video, as well as Red Hood Twitter over on Twitter for the Jason Todd master site, which helped in so many ways, not the least of which being their reading lists that helped so much in piecing together my own reading order for this series. Honestly, if you are going to try and embark on reading this yourself, go check them out. The link is down in the thing. And a extra special shout out to my beautiful, loving wife, Panda Scarlet, or the Darling Dormouse over on TikTok and Instagram. Her love for this era and its characters was what got me interested in exploring this concept at all. And this video simply would not exist without her consistent support and boundless knowledge. Not only did she assist in major portions of this video's script, this entire concept was hers from the jump, and I only achieved it because of the many nights spent discussing and rediscussing everything that appears in this video with her. Genuinely, this video is incredibly personal to both me and her. It's not really talked about all that much, but the first thing we ever discussed together was Jason Todd. She introduced me to this era of him, and everything in this video means the world to her. I made this video for her, and I do not think that she will ever know just how much it means to me that she shared this with me. So make sure to give her some love and to thank her personally for all of her many contributions down in the comments below. And lastly, an extra special thank you to all of you for watching this incredibly long, convoluted video. I know this one was a bit more than my usual videos, but I hope you can at least understand why. Make sure to like, subscribe, and to check out my other socials. I post original content on Instagram and TikTok every week. And once again, make sure to check out the Patreon, as I have some big changes that I'm going to be implementing very soon, as well as, like I said, an original video covering one of the issues from this entire saga that I'm going to be posting in conjunction with this. Also, be sure to check out my merch site, as I have been slowly updating that, and I have a couple new designs that should be out by the time this video comes out. With all of that out of the way, I have said my piece, and I will see you all next time. And now that the video is fully over, I just wanted to take a moment to shout out all of my lovely, beautiful patrons over on Patreon. Amanda Barnstead, Anthea Yu, Bill Bro, Black Blooded Beast, Christopher Bosgard, Cyber Dark, Deadly Question, Dominic Vakula, Dragon Fang, Ethan Cray, Fire Raven Soul, Gamer X, Jacob Safel, Jake Williamson, Jeffrey of Isles, Jojo the Frog, Karen Bloomquist, K. Joe, Kane Murray, Kyle Rayner, Magoo, Knox, Oplin, Shendude, and the Brain Teaser, as well as all of my other lovely, beautiful patrons over on Patreon. Can you guys believe that I thought I was going to get this out before Christmas? The original ending of this video literally had me saying, like, happy holidays, hope you guys enjoy it. And Jesus, I don't know if I can even figure out scheduling at this point. It is insane. I want to thank everybody for being so patient with me on this one. This was genuinely a passion project, and one of the reasons that I was so comfortable with it taking a little bit longer is just because it's something I really care about, and it's something I really wanted to put out into the world, as well as something that Scarlett really cared about and something she wanted to put out into the world, and I wanted to be able to figure that out for everybody and to be able to get it out. So thank you guys for being so patient. Thank you guys for even sticking around to watch it. Thank you guys for even sticking around to support me. I cannot do this without all of you, and I am just so thankful for the opportunity I've been given every single day. Oh, and by the way, the GoFundMe for my wedding is still open if you guys want to support that, but no pressure at all. I hope you guys have a beautiful, lovely day, and I'll see y'all in the next one.